Hi everyone, here's the Book Chemist once again, and today I wanted to recommend to you all Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, an absolutely fantastic novel that kept me gripped throughout its reading, that astounded me with its delicacy and its insightfulness, and made me realize how fragile so many of the human constructs around us, from our technological achievements to our social achievements to our very civilizations, truly are, no matter how solid and how eternal they might appear to us. Station 11 is a post-apocalyptic novel, and that's a genre I haven't touched much in recent years, even though I used to be quite fond of it as a teenager. In fact, chances are I would never have read it if it hadn't been warmly recommended by one of my patrons, Edgar Refinetti, to whom I am deeply grateful. Part of the reason why I've been keeping away from post-apocalyptic fiction is that I tend to find it quite disturbing these days, much more than when I was younger. But there's also a certain degree of disappointment that comes out of it. I often feel with post-apocalyptic fiction that I don't really get a certain reward out of these books, for instance, that justifies the degree of impactfulness and how disturbing I found the experience. It's not an uplifting or edifying type of hard-hitting fiction. It often seems, to me at least, to be a little self-serving, a little self-indulgent, and I think that Jonathan Lethem, in his recent novel The Arrest, another brilliant post-apocalyptic novel, points at one of the problems, one of the potential issues with the genre, which is that very often stories within these genres, stories of the world after the apocalypse, tend to either be absolutely and completely bleak and grim, and in those cases they tend to feel a little bit like ghost stories in the most simplistic conception of the term. They tend to feel like they're just trying to elicit a very strong reaction from the reader, almost for the sake of it. Or on the other end, and most frequently I would say, they tend to fall into a fallacy where they portray the post-apocalyptic world as more interesting, more fascinating, and more fun than the world we live in. A place that is often violent, is often dangerous, but also a place that's stripped of much of the hypocrisy of the modern world, a place where heroes can emerge, where a more simple life can be led, the kind of places where you might not want to live, but where it's quite fun to visit. Station 11, very much like The Arrest, manages to avoid this fallacy. It is by all means a gripping adventure story, and it offers some really fascinating details about how civilization, or how at least human settlements thrive and strive to survive in the world after a deathly pandemic. But it strips the description and the portrayal of this world from the glamour and the rugged charm that you often find in these post-apocalyptic worlds. Instead, everything that was lost in this catastrophic pandemic is constantly and always present. It is almost as if it is this collective, gigantic ghost that is haunting the characters on every page. They're always reminiscing, always discussing everything that was lost in the previous world, be them the everyday comforts that we take for granted, like television, or electric guitars, or computers, or the truly stunning human achievements such as sanitation, food production and abundance, that disappeared very fast when civilization collapsed. This haunting presence of the past is a very sobering presence in Station 11, because it prevents the book from turning what is in fact a catastrophe, the death of millions and billions of people, even though it's the fictional death of billions of people. It prevents the book from turning that into a source of fun, as often happens in post-apocalyptic fiction. Station 11's narrative jumps back and forth in time in a very natural way, and the novel spends way more time than I was expecting in the world before the pandemic. That part of the novel deals with the interconnected lives of a few friends, all revolving around a Hollywood and stage actor whose death is the event that sets off the entire novel, basically on page 1. The novel offers snapshots from the life of this actor, Arthur Lear, and his friends, his wives. It shows snapshots of relationships blooming and turning sour, friendships being rekindled, or friends realizing how little they still have in common with people they held dear years, if not decades before. It portrays very beautifully how ourselves and our relationships can change throughout time, and that inevitable gap that always separates our dream lives and our imagined lives, the ideas we have about what our lives are going to be like, from the daily reality that we end up living through. This broad cast of interconnected characters that I've been referring to are all fairly different from one another. Some of them are very introverted and come to find a great sense of reward from their daily job, even in a corporate environment. Some of them are artists, but are only concerned with making art for themselves, maybe for a few friends, whereas others are chasing fame and success as their sole driving goal. Some characters end up completely disgusted in their career and in their corporate jobs, while others manage to reinvent themselves after a few failed attempts at creating an identity, creating a career, a sense of self, and only finally eventually find happiness and self-satisfaction in an unlikely new world. All of these characters are portrayed in a way that shows their deep humanity and the complexity of their experiences and their feelings, and it's almost as if by portraying such a broad variety of human experience, Mandel is creating almost a museum of human experience, a collection of various individuals, in the same way as the Museum of Civilization, one of the driving plot elements in the novel, is this place that brings together ancient artifacts, old pieces of technology, old phones, old driving licenses from the world before this catastrophic event. There is a sense in here that this variety, the beauty of how diverse different people can be, is something that has to be protected, has to be safeguarded, and even celebrated. Station 11 does become a sanctuary to this variety, to this diversity, as all good novels at the end of the day cannot help but be. I guess the true magic of Station 11 is that it brings together what are almost two separate novels. An enthralling adventure story set 20 years after a catastrophic pandemic, and a very insightful novel that follows the lives of a few interconnected characters and explores their feelings and psyches with a great eye to detail. Either of these novels by itself would have been a great book, but the sum of their part is so much greater and even more magical, I want to say. It becomes impossible to separate these two strands because of how deeply interconnected they are, and the result is a truly moving, a truly impactful experience. I was gripped by this book, and I was moved by the end by this book as I haven't been in quite a long time. I was crying by the time the last page came around. I couldn't possibly recommend Station 11 more. If, like me, you're generally put off by fairly disturbing novels, you should know that, of course, it is a novel about an apocalyptic pandemic, so there is a certain disturbing side to it, but the novel deals with its theme very delicately, and there is huge there are huge amounts of hope in here that balance out the bleaker sides of the story, so that I would truly recommend it to anybody out there who has even a passing interest in narrative or in fiction. I really look forward to hearing what you thought about the book, if all of you are as enthusiastic about it as I was, and yeah, I really look forward to discussing the novel in the comments as always. Thank you as always for watching the video, that's always awesome, and thanks so much to my patrons for supporting the YouTube channel. Bye everybody.